So Akron released a plugin that allows you to edit your rich text block styles inline. This is basically how you used to have to emulate a rich text block before 420 came out and they released an actual rich text block. And you can see what's happening here is that they are changing the size and the color of this block of text to be green and size of 34, which is slightly bigger than the text around it. And the reason we're going to be using this is because it's going to allow the user to change the size of their text without having to create a style for each size that they would want to do. So I'll leave a link to this and the actual plugin below, and just make sure you install this before you continue following along, otherwise this won't work. Now you may have noticed that the only style tags being used is a span over here. I'm not sure why they chose the word span, but that's what they chose. That's because the way this is coded, you don't really use the style tags that we used to use. So in Unreal, we had to create a data table that had all these text styles in it, and we would fill out their information over here like this. However, using this plugin, we don't actually need any of these text styles. We only actually need one of them, which is going to be our normal one, and it has to be called default. And then we can actually get rid of the rest of these, but I'm going to keep them around just because I want to copy and paste the colors later. You might have also noticed that there is no opening tag at the beginning of this sentence, and that is because when you have a text style that is called default, the rich text block will automatically think that you're trying to use the default text style. But the reason we weren't using this default before was because it was just more convenient when we had to do stuff like automatically styling our words, because if we didn't have a text style at the beginning of our sentence, it makes it harder to actually find the last text style when we're trying to automatically style our words over here. So that's why we were just using the text style that we called normal, but now we have to use one called default. So what we're going to try to do is go from this, the original one, where we have our opening tags and then our color tags or whatever before our keywords, to this where we just use span as our normal tag. And then when we want to change something about that text style, we would use span followed by either color, style, etc. equals whatever. And that's how we're going to color our words and stuff. But that's going to be inconvenient to type out, so we're still going to be using our toTargetText function to type as little as possible into our actual scripts over here. So let's start with the very first thing we do in our sequence, which is make sure our text starts with an opening tag. Oh, and it also makes it easier to add our quotes when we actually start with an opening tag, which is another reason why we want to make sure we have an opening tag. So we still want to check to see if our process string starts with a less than sign, which is going to let us know if we are starting with a tag or not. And if it doesn't, then instead of having a normal over here, we're just going to have a less than sign followed by a greater sign. The reason we're not putting a span in between those two symbols is because we're going to do that somewhere near the end when we say close all of our tag styles or something. Because we know that every single text style is going to start with a less than sign, span, spacebar. So it's just easier in my opinion to just save that for the end when we do a, say, replace inline. Now we need to add our quotes. So if we are adding quotes, we are going to split our string at the greater than sign, and we're going to append our less string to a greater than sign with quotes, followed by our right of that string, which is what we used to have, followed by a quote again. So this is still going to be the same because it's not affected at all by our actual tags inside of it. Now we need to automatically style our keywords, which is kind of a pain, so we'll move on for now to this branch where we check to see if we are using a small text style or not. And that's where this gets a lot more interesting, because now we're not limited to having to create a new text style for every single text style we were doing. Instead, what we can do is use a span and then size equals, let's say 12 or something like that, and that's how we're going to get our text size. So back in our visual novel library, when we do our toTargetText, instead of using a boolean for a useSmallText style, we are going to make this a integer, which is going to be our text size. So let's just call this text size. And now when we do our text size, what we're going to do is, instead of branching on our text size, let's get rid of this branch. We are going to have to do this replace inline either way. So let's drag this into our then 3. And instead of replacing our greater than sign with a small greater than sign, we are going to replace it with a size equals quotes number quote greater than sign. So let's drag off this replacement text and do a append. Our append A is going to be spacebar size equals quote. Our B is going to be our text size to string, and then we need to add another pin for our C, which is going to be another quote followed by the greater than sign. So this is going to be set text size. Now that we set our text size, let's close all of our tags, and this is where we go through each of our less than signs and replace it with a closing tag followed by the less than sign. But each of our tags actually have to start with the word span, so let's just add that to the end of this. So after this less than sign, we are going to do span, and that has to be lowercase, I believe, and we'll just add a spacebar to that. And when we close our last text style, that's just going to be the same as it is right now. So now we just need to take care of automatically styling our keywords. So if you remember, when we automatically style our keywords, first we parse our process string into an array of words. Then we set our process string to be nothing because we're going to rebuild our process string from scratch. And then we go through each of our words, set our current string to be that array element. If it is a tag, then we're going to set our last text style to be that tag. Now here's the thing about our text styles now. They're kind of a pain to type in our dialog. So if you're to look at this example, in order to make this green, we don't just say span green. We have to say span color equals and then this hash symbol followed by the hex value, I believe, of that color, which is, not a very friendly way of typing it. So what we're going to do instead is make another dictionary where we're going to store our friendly tags and then the tags as they actually appear inside of our to target text. So we'll just call this variable tags, and this is going to be a string. It's going to be a dictionary, and the value is going to be a string as well. So I'm going to add an element to our tags, and I want our tag to be, say, red. What we're going to do when we find our last text style is go to our current string and replace anything that says red with what it should actually say. So red is obviously a color, so what we're going to do is for our value of red, we would say color equals quotes, and then we'd have to copy the color from our text style. So over here in red, let's just click this to get our color picker, and then we can grab the hex linear, I believe. Copy this and paste that into our quotes. We need a hash symbol first, and then we can paste that into our quotes. Now, if you look at the actual source code of this plugin, you can see what else we can modify. We can change the font, which should be obvious enough what the font means. We can change the size, which we already did. We can change the style, which is whether it is bold, italic, etc. Well, you can see that over here, span style equals italic, and over here you can see it is italic. And we can also change the color, which we, again, just did. So let's take care of our style. You can see here in the example that the style is undercased italic. So back in our tags, let's just add another value. We'll call this italic. And for the value, we can just say style equals quotes italic quote. And now when we find our last text style, instead of setting our last text style to be this substring, which is going to be something like, say, this red right here, we are going to have to process this substring. So let's go up here because we're going to need a little bit more space, and we are going to have to get each of the keys in this tags, and then if any of these keys are inside of this substring, we will replace it with its value. So let's get our tags, and then we are going to have to get its keys, and then we are going to have to go through each of these keys, and then we're going to have to get our last text style and then replace inline. The search text is going to be our array element, and the replacement text for our replace inline is going to be what we find from our tags from that key. So off this tags, let's do a find and then drag our array element into what we're finding, and then this output is going to be our replacement text. So now, after we set our last text style, we're going to drag this into our keys, and then this execution pin plugs into our set process string. So now that we found our last text style, we're going to move on, and we're going to ask if our current string is a keyword. And if it is not, then we're just going to add it back to our process string, and it moves on like normal. It's going to be fine. However, if it is true, then we are going to do this big append over here where we add our process string, the left of our current string, followed by that keyword's style. And this is where we're gonna have to change some stuff, because before we could just get away with saying, alright, well, that's red inside of the less than and greater than signs. But now our tags look different, so instead of saying red, we're gonna have to say color equals quotes hash followed by red and end quotes. And if we wanted it to be bold, we would have to do a spacebar, style equals quotes lowercase bold quotes. And make sure these are lowercase, and in your tags, when you would want to do a bold, you would do a uppercase B for bold. That way when you find your last text style up here, it doesn't mistake your friendly text style with, well, what the text style should actually look like. So actually, we would have to change our search case from ignore case to be case sensitive over here in our replace inline. So I'm going to do the same thing for each of our keyword styles. Let's just copy this and paste that into Ricky. And for Yuri, I'm going to paste this in here as well, but we need to change the color to be purple, which is why I kept these around. So purple is going to be this, and we're going to get the hex linear. Anyways, so back to when we do our automatically styled keywords, we add that text style, and then we add the actual word followed by our last text style, which is still good, followed by the right of that string, followed by spacebar. So this is all good now. So now that we've done all that, I believe our toTarget text function should actually be working fine. So back in our dialog widget, we're going to have to change some stuff about our actual rich text blocks. It's not a big change, but we do have to do it. In our decorator classes, in our rich text block, we have to hit this plus sign and add a rich text block inline decorator. Make sure you don't click on the image decorator, you click on the inline decorator. And we're going to have to do this for every single rich text block. So that means our notification text block also has to do this, and any rich text blocks that we did in our history or our codex, for example, needs to make sure that the decorator classes has this rich text block inline decorator. Also in our graph, anytime we did our toTarget text, we changed it from being a Boolean input for if we're using a small text to a integer. So whenever we do our toTarget text now, we're going to have to input a text size. So in our dialog, I'm going to add two new variables. They're both going to be integers, and we're going to call them something like dialog text size and notification text size. And anytime in our dialog we do a toTarget text, we're going to plug in our dialog text size, except for when we're doing our notification. So let's just find all of these. This first one is this one. Over here is our option text, so we're still going to plug in our dialog text size. This third one is our notify, so let's plug in our notification text size into here instead of our dialog text size, and we can get rid of this text size boolean by refreshing this node, like that. This fourth toTarget text is our add to history, so actually we would need another variable here for our history text size, and plug this into here and here as well. We should also actually give these some proper sizes. In our dialog text size, I believe it was 28. Our history text size was also 28, and our notification text size was 17. And in your options, you would just add sliders again for the player to adjust whatever text size they want. Now, if we were to hit play and start our game, you'll see that our text isn't really coming out as it should be. You'll notice that Ricky turns out red as it's supposed to, but everything else has their tags appearing, and that is because in between our span and our size we have two space bars going on instead of just one, and that's messing with our text tags. So let's close this out, and in our visual novel library, before we actually return our process string, we're going to replace inline in our process string. And what we're searching for is two space bars, and our replacement text is just going to be one space bar. So if we compile and save and play this now, you'll see that the tags disappear. But our text is still slightly messed up. We have our beginning of our text appearing twice. And it turns out that the first words being repeated is actually my fault. When we did our automatically styled keywords, I connected our replace inline directly into our set process string. But this replace inline is being done in its for each loop, so this is being called multiple times. What we want to do is not connect this directly into our set process string, but connect our completed into our process string. So if we were to compile and play this now, you'll see that our text appears fine again, and if we go to the next line, it still appears fine, which is great. So if we were to go to our dialog and test out our dialog text size, let's make this something like 50 just to make it really noticeable. You'll see that our text size is huge, which is great because if we wanted to set this to be 50 before, we would have had to make a text style for 50. But now we can actually just get rid of all of these except for the default. I'm going to set this back to 28 though because I like 28. And if we were to add a notification to our first line, we can check to see that our notification is working fine. And there we go, we see Hello Ricky there. And it was in small letters. If we were to change it to be big letters, So notification size to be something like 50, why not? You'll see that the notification size is huge. So that's all working well and good. Our history is a little messed up though. If we were to right click and go to our history, you'll see that this is not great because we didn't add that decorator to our history. So let's exit out of here and go to our history entry widget. And in the entry text, we want to go to the decorator classes, hit the plus sign, and add the rich text block inline decorator. And if we were to hit play again and go to our history, it looks messed up, but it's actually looking fine. Our speaker name is actually messed up because that is also a rich text block. So speaker name, decorator class, plus sign, rich text block inline, hit play, go to our history, and there we go, it's all looking fine now. Now, I want to add the black outlines back to our words, and as of right now, this plugin doesn't allow you to do that. If we were to look at the stuff we can actually do, the outline settings is not one of those things. So instead, I'm just going to make it part of our default text style, because our text style is black anyway, so a black outline added to that isn't really going to do much. So back in our content browser, in our DT text styles, in our default, I'm just going to go to our outline size and make this 1. I'm also going to change our actual text color to be white because apparently that's what visual novels do. The text isn't actually black. So if we were to hit play once again, you'll see that we have the white text with the black outline, and Ricky also has that black outline, which is good. It's a little too white, so I'm going to make it, a little less white, but you get the point. So if we wanted to add some text styles to our words that aren't keywords, we can still do that. So if we want our stop to be in red, we can just add the red tag before our stop. And after our stop, we can add a less than sign and greater than sign. We don't have to put the span in between there because that is taken care of for us in our toTargetText function. So if we were to hit play, you'll see that our stop is in red. And if we were to change this red tag to be a italic tag and hit play, you'll see that our stop is in italics. However, if we were to try to do them both by putting our red before our italic with a space bar, something weird happens. We hit play, and now the actual tag shows up here without replacing our red and our italic with the tags that they need to be in order for our tags to actually show them as what they should be. And the reason for that is because when we do our automatically style keywords, we are parsing our process string into an array based on the space bars. And in between our red and our italic is a spacebar, so it's getting cut off here. So we would have to not put a spacebar between our red and our italic. And when we hit play, this is what happens. We have our friends followed by the span and the color, and that's all looking fine, except there's no spacebar between the color and the style, so this isn't being read properly as a tag. In other words, we still need a spacebar in between our color and our style, but we can't actually put a spacebar here. So what I'm going to do instead is in our dialog, whenever we want to have multiple tags, in between them, I'm going to have a underscore, like that. So now the tag looks like less than sign, red, underscore, italic, greater than sign. And in our visual novel library, when we do our automatically styled keywords, before we go through this for each loop, what I'm going to do is do a replace inline on our last text style. So we end up with something like this, and in the search text, I'm going to do a underscore, so we're replacing underscores with a spacebar. And if we were to hit play now, it looks fine. We have our friend stop for Ricky, and the stop is both red and italicized. Now there is one slight issue, and that is that our period and our end quotes are also red and italicized, and that is because we did not put a spacebar in between our stop and the next tag. So make sure when you do your next tag, it is before your next word and not after your previous word, so that there is a space bar in between them. And if we do that, we hit play, our period and our end quotes go back to being the normal tag, so that's fine. And if we go to the next line, you'll see that that's all looking fine as well. So that takes care of transitioning to using the rich text block inline decorator plugin. And you might think that was a lot of work for something that didn't really look any different, but in my opinion it was worth it because we can now ask the player how big they want their text to be by changing our dialog, notification, and history text size in our options menu. I won't bother going through how to make a slider for that because that's, again, exactly the same as our text speed and stuff, so you should be able to do that yourself. It was also worth it in my opinion because we can now do stuff like mix our text styles so that it is also red and italic, and we don't have to create a new text style to have a combination of that. We can just define what our red means, what our italic means, and then put them together, we can do the same thing again for, say, bold or purple, blue, etc. Anyways, I hope that helped and that you were able to follow along. Most of this video was just modifying our toTargetText function, and I hope that you were able to understand why we were modifying stuff the way that we did, and that I will see you in the next video.